do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Alrighty, good morning and welcome to the July the 12th edition of the Counter Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS, here on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for your listenership, joining us again. To get in contact with the show, you know the numbers, but for those of you who may be new, the number is 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button if you have a question and a very quick comment, very quickly, and you can do that. For those of you who are new to the show, don't be scared. You can just ask your question and make sure you tell the call screener that you are a new caller, and we have something very special for that to happen to make sure that you get heard. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And your Gmail will go into rotation, and when we get time, it will be read, and then I will inform you that it will be the date and time that it will be read. I will also let you know that I have received it by saying got it. And lastly, you can join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. Then you want to make sure you click on programs and you want to produce Justice Show. Click on that. The chat room icon becomes available. Then you're able to push that, and then you can get in the chat room and join the chat. One of the things that you will notice when you get in the chat is a review of last week's show by one of our loyal listeners. Constructive Action Items usually puts up a list of the different things that we have discussed. And there's usually some very good conversation in the chat. And occasionally I will refer to a comment or something in the chat. So those are the ways that you can contact the show. So we are praying that we have a good program. Okay. First of all, let me say good morning to you, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
All righty. Now, we have this section that we call the Thoughts and Expressions from the Mind of Neely Fuller, Jr. And, Mr. Fuller, we're going to start off today's program with that. So what are your thoughts or expressions that you've been thinking about?
Well, I was thinking about Ms. Oprah Winfrey and the passing of her progenitor, her quote-unquote father, under the system of white supremacy. And I was thinking about how he was running a barber shop all the time that she was busy making her $1 billion plus, and that he was still running his barber shop right up until the time that he got ill, I think. If I kept up with the news as it really happened, and passed away. And that he had been doing this, running that same barbershop in the same place for decades. And way before she started making the money that she reportedly has made, $1 billion plus, maybe more than that, much more than that. And that's what I was thinking about. And I was thinking about wants, 2 words, wants and values. Now, evidently, Mr. Winfrey wanted to run that barbershop, which is what he was doing, because if he wanted to do something else, and he was on excellent terms, I understand, with his daughter, that he could have chosen something else to do.
and probably could have done it with having that rapport with his daughter, who has reportedly over $1 billion, Miss Oprah Winfrey. But he chose to remain in that barbershop. You just go to the barbershop like he was desperate to pay his light bill. And he would go there just like anyone who is struggling in a barbershop, even though I presume he was not struggling to run his barbershop. But that's what he wanted to do. And like in the textbook for Victims of White Supremacy, everybody and every creature wants to do something. And I was thinking about Mr. Winfrey wanting to run a barbershop, and that's what he was doing. And the other word that I was thinking about, other than wants, is the word values. Now, he valued himself as a person running a barbershop, even though he probably had access to doing other things. Maybe just standing at a roulette wheel in Las Vegas with a whole lot of hanger-on friends and gambling and going to the horse races, or just traveling, or going fishing, or going on cruises, or somewhere making a nuisance of himself. He probably could have chose to do that. But apparently, on the surface at least, he wanted to run a barbershop, and that's what he did, because that's what he was doing long before his daughter started into the business of becoming the person that she finally became in her career-wise. So he wanted to do this. And it was constructive when you look at, if you refer to the textbook for Victims of White Supremacy, that's the bottom line for everybody on the planet, every person. Are you doing something constructive? Well, a person might say, well, just cutting hair, that's not necessarily constructive. Well, but is it destructive? Is it harming anybody? Well, no, not that. The average person probably would say. Well, then what's the problem? He's doing what he wants to do, and that's what he values. And evidently the people who sat in his barber's chair and got a haircut from a person who had a daughter who was a billionaire, maybe that's what they valued, being the customers, and maybe they valued him being a barber, and because he was probably had customers who weren't really delving into thinking about going to that barbershop, because there was a person who ran the barbershop who had a daughter who was a billionaire. His regular customers were probably people who had been going there long before they even knew that, because they wanted to go to that barbershop. Most people have a habit of going to the same barbershop. Once you establish that habit, it becomes like forever. As long as that barbershop is there, among black people, you're going to that barbershop. I know that was the case with me. Once I got in the habit of going to the same barbershop, I'd go to the same barbershop every time without fail. So he's doing what he wanted to do. That's the word I was thinking about. It has a basically constructive result. And he valued that. So how does that apply to black people in general? Same thing. Look at what it is you want to do, even if you had a whole lot of money or access to it. You would still do the same thing. And is that thing that you would want to do of constructive value? Because somebody out there right now wants to go and do some gangbanging. And before this week is out, they're going to do something. They're going to kill somebody. Somebody out there now, some black person is going to kill another black person. Hasn't done it yet. But before this week is out, that is the thing that person wants to do. Because that's what they're going to do. And before the week is out, it's going to happen. And when they look back on it years later, they say, now that's what a big part of what I wanted to do with my life. But Mr. Winfrey just wanted to go to the barbershop and cut people's hair, even though he had, presumably, access to some of his daughter's money, where he didn't have to go to that barbershop at all, ever, and probably have his own barber while he sits on some type of makeshift throne or something. Whatever. You can do a lot of things if you have a rapport with someone who has access to $1 billion. Just a thought. Mm-hmm. So every person who is listening to this, think about what it is you want to do, really want to do. If you had your choices of what you want to do. It seems like Mr. Winfrey was very focused on what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to go gang banging. He didn't want to go to the casinos. I don't guess he did and whatnot. But even if he did, he definitely didn't have to go to a barbershop and cut somebody's hair. Mm-hmm. In my, reasonably speaking. And he had that, value system. Mm-hmm. So what do you value? In other words, all the black people out here who are within the sound of my voice, what do you value? What does Neely Fuller value? Neely Fuller values trying to do what he says he wants done. And what does Neely Fuller say that he wants done? Have a world in which there's no mistreatment. Mm-hmm. And he concluded that he would spend his time getting rid of the biggest source of mistreatment, and that's the system of white supremacy. Trying to figure out how to do it. So that's what I'm doing. That's my want.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Just a thought. Okay, well, we thank you for your thoughts. One more thing before we exit that. Wouldn't that be covered under the on page 171
171, 172? Just 4 questions there. Mm-hmm. What do you want to do? However, the way it's written in the textbook is, what do I want to do? So the first person you ask that question of, when that question comes to mind about wants, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? Because if you want to do something, you should be thinking about having some kind of plan. Otherwise, you probably won't get it done because you don't have a plan. And then the fourth question, what do you expect the constructive result to be if you do what you want to do?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Speaking of business, didn't your dad run several businesses that some of that you were a part of?
Yes, I was a part of all of it.
Okay.
As far as trying to run it. But at age 19, he died, and he hadn't taught me enough about how to run these businesses.
Okay.
And plus the businesses were dying anyway because the town was dying. But there was no way he could have predicted that. Mm-hmm. And nor did I.
That was in Muskogee?
That was in Muskogee, Oklahoma.
Okay, Muskogee, Oklahoma.
Had a hotel, cafe, meat market, blacksmith shop that he had rented out, and a grocery store, and a beauty parlor, and a barber shop.
Okay.
And all those businesses failed because the black side of town was failing. And the last report that I got here in 2022 has flatlined. I mean,
okay.
That town has gone to seed altogether. Why? Because there's no infrastructure, and there wasn't one then. The only reason, at one time, it was a farming place, and prior to an army base coming, and any time you have an army base come next to a small town, that means money.
That means money, yes, sir.
So they had Camp Gruber there during World War II. But after World War II, the town begins kind of rapidly to deteriorate because the army base evaporated.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that. What do you want to do? Once. Okay. Speaking about once, I want to talk to Darnell in New York. Let me see if I can get you there, Darnell. See if I can get you in here. Good morning, Darnell. Got you on here, brother. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, why is it important for the victims of white supremacy to stay focused on the constructive code of thought, speech, and action in the system of white supremacy?
It's only important if that's what you want to do. And that's why I went through all of that, talking about what's important to you. Now, I'm a victim of racism. I can't speak for other victims of racism about how I can make recommendations, which is what I do with the textbooks and with this program. Because I say no major problem on the planet can be solved until you solve the problem of racism. I believe that. I stick with that. I will listen to other people say, no, there's another major problem. Or rather, there is a major problem, and that's not it. Racism is not the major problem. But I believe, up to now, this very moment, that racism is the major problem on the planet, and if you solve that problem, the other problems will be very easy to solve. If you can solve that one. Just the race problem, because that's a virus, in my opinion. I could be in error. And there are people who, particularly people of various religions, who just say that, oh no, there's a much greater problem than this problem called race. That's way down on the list. But I'm saying you're not going to solve any. In my opinion, you're not going to solve any problem on this planet without solving the race problem. That's why I say it's the major problem. Other problems you might can solve, you're not going to solve. You're just going to keep having every type of problem you can name as long as you have the system of white supremacy. That's the conclusion I have come to over the years I have been on the planet. So
yes, sir.
The person who is calling, that's up to you as an individual to decide. Just because it's important to Neely Fuller doesn't mean that it's important to you. You probably see something else to do. You probably say that once we conquer outer space, then all other problems will evaporate. That might be. And so you're studying how you can get involved in the space program. But that's your choice, if that's the conclusion you have come to. But I'm saying, I think that if you knew everything there was about space and had gone to every planet in space, then when you come back to this Earth, you're going to be dealing with the race problem. And if you're a person of color, you're in trouble. Regardless of how much you know about anything.
Okay. All right, Darnell, thank you very much for your call. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's go to the Black Mermaid. Get ready now. I'm going to tune you in here, or click in. Okay, you are on. Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
I have a quick question. Okay, so Mr. Fuller, you said that white supremacy makes rot out of the minds of the subject people and makes rot out of the minds of the white people who perpetuate it. My question goes back to the white person or white people who thought of white supremacy. Did the thought of white supremacy come from an already rotten mind, or did the thought of white supremacy rot their mind, which then rotted the minds of future generations that came?
Well, if I understand the question, everything starts with the mind. And somebody thought up a system, evidently, it's very simple. That what would it be like to have a whole category of people that you can dominate and mistreat in every area of activity for your fun, glory, and material comfort? And somebody thought up one, and it's called white supremacy and or racism. And it's the most powerful ideology, in my opinion, ever thought up. More powerful than all of the religions put together. I don't care what religion you name. There's no religion stronger than the system of white supremacy. And they have proven that. They're not in the process of proving that. They've proven that a long time ago. So somebody thought it up. And it had to come out of your mind. Everything starts with the mind of people that people do, or even animals. Everything starts with the mind. That's why animals have, most animals have heads of some type. And in that head, we call it a head, H-E-A-D, is a thing called a brain. And the brain manufactures ideas that we refer to as ideas or the mind. It's a factory for that. So somebody who is classified as white, who classified themselves as white, thought up the idea, well, why not do all the world's business on the basis of what color somebody is? Let's try that on for size. And they tried it and found out that it worked very well. Very smooth operation, apparently. I mean, probably the smoothest. People have had all kind of fights, tribal fights, family fights, and whatnot. But they found out that it doesn't take a whole lot of fighting to pull this idea off. Because first of all, it doesn't look like any of these dark-skinned people even understand what you're doing. So, hey, let's keep going with it. See how far it'll go. And it went farther, according to the evidence, than any political and religious idea ever thought up in the minds of people. I think that I might have been answering your question. I hope I did, but if I didn't, say so.
Okay, wait a minute.
Is she gone?
No, she's not gone. Black Mermaid, did he answer your question? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I was just basically saying that did the person who, or people who thought of white supremacy, was their minds already rotten, or did that thought rotten their minds?
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Because that's something people can think about. What was your mind doing before you thought of whatever you thought of? But I don't know. I mean, that's like that. I would have to know the origin of things, the origin of people. I would have to be at a godlike level to know what a person is going to think. Before they are born, and I know before they are born what they are going to think after they're born. See, that would be the same thing. I would know the genesis of everything. of people, period. I would know the origin of the universe. In other words, I would be on the level of what we call the God force. And I'm not on that level. And I don't know of anybody who is.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Black Mermaid. Thank you for your call very much here. Thank you. Let me do this. I'm going to take a little station break here so we can get everybody in here. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, if you would like to participate in today's program, just do this. Call this number, 516-453-9921. And you can either listen or you can press the number 1 button if you have a question or comment. When you do that, give the call screener your name so that it will appear on my screen and I can properly introduce you when the time comes. Okay, we can do that. If you are a first-time caller listening to the program, and we're so delighted that you are a first-time caller and you want something to say or want to understand how the program or how the show works, you call that same number and make sure that you give the call screener your name and tell them that you are a first-time caller, and we'll fix you right up so that you can be heard. Okay. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And when I get it, I will tell you that I got it. I will just say got it. And it will be read. It will go online and it will be read in a time when maybe we're running short or we have a lot of space, then we can put it in there. You can also get on the into the chat room, and we are delighted that you do that. Just go to blogtalkradio.com. When you do that, then you want to click on where it says programs. Click on the Produce Justice show when it comes up. You get on that, and then when you do that, the chat box will come up. Click that, and you're in the chat room. And when you do, please be sure that you go and look at what constructive action items have written, usually a rundown of last week's show to give you some idea of what's going on. Particularly if you're a new caller, you can see how the program works in the chats that go in there. So, or on there, or whatever, but that's good. So those are the ways that you can get on the program. Mr. Fuller in a few will be talking about his book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. He'll tell you how to get that, but all materials you can get here by going to ProduceJustice.com. And if you do order the book from ProduceJustice.com and they don't have it, as far as I know, we might be up to speed now. I'll get a check on that in the break here. You can also go to Amazon.com and mention Mr. Fuller's name on the show, and there's something set up, I guess, for us for that. But anyway, make sure you do that so the books will be available at Amazon.com. Okay. Okay, right here. Let's do a Gmail. This comes from Anita. She says this, hello, Mr. Fuller. I've noticed recently and suddenly there has been a lot of high percentage of black people, particularly dark-skinned black people, that has been disproportionately cast or inserted into nearly every facet of big and small screen entertainment, advertising, marketing, and the like. The white supremacist has dug up old rappers to sell alcohol while their sexual music plays loudly in the background. Black seniors are used in commercials to sell over-the-counter drugs. There's lots of black people in fast food, particularly in insurance commercials. To boot, the white supremacist is showing a commercial where there is a crystal black-skinned fine brother with shiny white teeth acting as a gunslinger in a scene with a white gunslinger during an era when black people were enslaved. The whole idea that this would have been possible during slavery era would have been unheard of, let alone that black men would have the courage to speak to a white man directly without facing sure death. Mr. Fuller, my question is, do you, Mr. Fuller, think this is a deceptive feel-good moment or an effort and push by the white supremacists to bring us up to the top of the boat, to, quote, top of the boat, quote, to make it appear that there is no longer racism by showing black faces? Or could it also be that the white supremacists using black people for fun, glory, and entertainment to sell their products?
All of the above, but I understand the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Everything that the white supremacists do is to give strength to the system of white supremacy. That's why it's something that needs to be gotten rid of so we can replace it with a system of justice. A system of white supremacy is a system of non-justice, non-stop. As long as you have the system of white supremacy, you're not going to have justice on the planet anywhere at any time under any circumstance. It's not possible to be done. You have to get rid of the entire system and replace it with a better system, and the logical better system would be a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Underline constructive. And then the world would be on the course of being the so-called, to use a cliche, better place.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot do that with the system of white supremacy in place. It's a system that's designed to do harm, directly and indirectly, to people of color in all areas of activity, nonstop, in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Worldwide, nonstop, every minute of every day. And so regardless of what they come up with, advertising or whatever and whatnot, it's all designed to have a destructive effect on the people of color of this planet. All of it. Regardless of what it looks like on the surface.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, when you were in the service, and you always talk about that sergeant, which I wish I had known, when he was able to observe your book, or the pages or whatever that you allowed him to read, and he gave you his thoughts on that, did you detect that he thought that this book would be beneficial to him, or what?
I never did that.
Okay.
He never was aware that I was writing a book. I wasn't aware that I was writing a book. I was just jotting down notes about what I thought. The notes were for me. The only reason I mention that sergeant is because he started me in a serious way to thinking about things being logical, about slowing down. He noticed that I always, I had a tendency to, whatever I was doing, I wanted to do it real fast. And he said, Fuller, always think before you act. Said, you just run into things, just grab things and just any kind of old way and hope that it'll all work out. He said, somehow you got off track somewhere thinking that a whole lot of action will automatically make things be the way they ought to be. Just as long as you're moving fast. You don't have to think about it at all. Just move fast. And when I checked myself, I found out that I was actually that way. It kind of made me, it bothered me and kind of made me a little bit angry when he would talk to me like that and say that that's the way I was, but that's the way I was. And he observed it. He said, slow down, Fuller. Think before you act on anything. And when I say think, I don't mean for 2 or 3 minutes. You might have to think for 2 or 3 years before you make any kind of move. Have you ever thought of that? And then he'd give me examples of people who invented things. It took them a couple of decades sometimes of thinking before they made a move on what they were thinking about.
Yes, sir.
A couple of decades is 20 years. He said, you want everything done in 2 seconds. And that's why you make a mess of everything. And so he started me to thinking. But I never showed him any of my writings or anything. It never even occurred to me to show anybody what I was writing, because I was writing it for me.
That reminds me of what's written at the bottom of the textbook. It says, a textbook / workbook. The first word is thought.
Thought. Absolutely.
Speech, and or action for the victims of racism, white supremacy. So we got to think. Actually, without going too deep, what you just said is really a prophetic, but I'm not going to go there. But those of you that know where I'm going know that that is a prophetic word about being slow to speak. Okay, we won't go there. Darnell, get ready, Darnell. You're up. Good morning and welcome to the program. What you got? What you got?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I reside in Ohio now, so it's been real hot in Ohio lately. I'm quite sure everyone knows. Recently, we had I think a 10 or 11-year-old girl that had to travel out of state to get an abortion because I think she was a victim of incest. I do believe that's what happened.
That's correct.
So everybody is making a big to-do about that in terms of the Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court giving the decisions to the state. So I think everybody can agree on that abortion shouldn't be used as birth control. Most people would agree with that. But in terms of rape and incest, my question, Mr. Fuller, wouldn't it be logical to go after the rapists and the pedophiles?
To go after them?
Yes, sir.
Go after them by doing what?
As far as criminal charges, going after them more aggressively. It seems like the focus is on Roe v. Wade when the focus should be on the rapists and the pedophiles.
Well, you have to focus on everything that people are doing. That's why I have the 9 areas of activity. So it's not an either or. You want to do the best possible thing in every move that you make, each and every minute of each and every day, everywhere in the known universe where you happen to be, under every circumstance. Look around you, see what's going on, and say, now, everything that I'm looking at that's going on, should it be going on? And then correct all the things that shouldn't be going on in every area of activity, not in some, in every move that you make on this planet, with every breath that you take. Do the most constructive thing. That's the codified way of looking at things. What is the most constructive thing to do? Because it's either going to be constructive or non-constructive. It's going to be constructive or destructive. That's every move that you make is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. Codification is about always, without exception, making the most constructive move that will ever be made by anybody. That calls for a lot of thinking. So in answer to the question, Roe versus Wade, whatever it is, abortions, non-abortions, incest, what that's about and all like that. It's not either or. It's all. You have to do it all. You just can't do part of it. That's a great part of the problem. The white supremacists are experts at steering people to handle part of a problem. They let black people do a lot of that. Just a little part here and a little part there, but all the rest of it is just falling apart. Like having a car, and it has an excellent paint job, but the car won't move. Mm-hmm. But you can always say, look at that paint job. The white supremacists always approach black people with that. Well, now you can do this, but now leave this alone. That's my department. And then they wink at each other because they say, yeah, they fall for that every time. Mm-hmm. I mean, we give them part of what they're supposed to get, knowing that part of it won't do. Because that part that they do, it takes other parts to make the whole thing work. They haven't figured that out. And we get away with that all the time with them. Well, you can either do this or you can do that. And you say, and black people, because we're trained to do that, say, okay, well, thank you. I mean, I'll take it, you know. I'll take the paint job on my car. And then you raise the hood and it's got no engine.
Let me ask you
used
this.
to it. Mm-hmm. We think that's progress.
Okay.
No, it's got to do it all, sir. All or nothing. Yes, you know, that's the way this works.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Do you think that since we are in the system of white supremacy, that certain things like that are, I'm trying to think of the word, I don't want to say justified, but we're taught this in that, for example, Michael Jackson, the late Michael Jackson, was an alleged pedophile because he allegedly had sex with children. And so people ostracized him and talked about him and all that kind of thing. But when you look at the currency, I'm going to say but when you look at the currency of this concept of what is used here in the Northwest Hemisphere, the presidents that are on there, and you know the names of them on the $20 bill and so forth, a lot of these men had slaves and had sex with those slaves, and a lot of those slaves were underage. I'm thinking about Sally Hemings in particular. But anyway, they were, you could say that they were, according to historical records that have been handed down, that they were pedophiles. So I'm saying that isn't because of what they did, that is that sanctioned, or it is looked the other way? Well,
to give the codified response, the white supremacists are guilty of everything that white people do in the area of sex that shouldn't be done, and they are also guilty of everything that black people do that shouldn't be done. See, codification is about wrapping it up and you know, not having a long, drawn-out discussion on something that is obvious right there on the surface. Counter-racist codification is pure science. Mm-hmm. And so that's the response to that. Everything that both black people and white people do during the system of white supremacy is the fault of the white supremacists. Black people just copy what white people do. We don't do anything that's some type of breakthrough, something that we thought of that's real, you know, nobody ever thought of it before and whatnot. We're under the system of white supremacy. So all this nonsense that black people get involved in, and we get involved in all of it when it comes to the area of sex, tons of it, in answer to your question about pedophiles and all like that, everything that's non-constructive that black people do, it's the white supremacists to blame. They're in charge of our sexual activities. All of it, not some. All the stuff that we think that we thought of. They invented it. And then they pass it around us. And then they involve themselves in it because they think that anything that they do is okay, regardless. Hey, and what else would you think when you're the master of the universe? And that black people, I mean, they're just some scraps or whatnot. Just have them doing anything, I mean, as long as it's not constructive. You get a black person doing something constructive, that black person has to be retaught or liquidated.
Yes,
because black people are never supposed to do anything that makes sense in the system of white supremacy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Darnell. Yeah, in Ohio, yeah. That was a shame about that 10-year-old girl. You're correct. John, Houston, we're in.
Grand Rising, gentlemen. Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. I don't know if that was a purposeful thing to slide and segue me in on that, but let me just say a quick comment on that is, where does that leave personal responsibility? And maybe you'll address that after I speak on my VGQ for today, gentlemen. July 12th is supposedly the latest installment of this January 6th commission that will analyze and reveal whether we call them suspected white supremacists or not. The Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, and the Proud Boys, I'm collectively, Mr. Bobby, putting them together under this category of either white supremacists or white nationalists. Stating that this will be exposed and revealed today with a supposed former, and again, here we are qualifying these things, allegedly former spokesperson for the Oath Keepers, that will reveal how they plotted to do this alleged insurrection. And that leads to my question of, is there such a thing as allies with suspected white supremacists? Heather Heyer, Viola Luzo, Goodman, and Schwerner, and the ultimate, I believe, the ultimate white man ally, John Brown. Do you believe, and is it possible, when you are allowing them, by calling them suspected white supremacists, that a true white ally will only be revealed in the ultimate sacrifice, because all these individuals did it, whether they willingly did it or not, the ultimate sacrifice of laying down their life to hopefully end the system of white supremacy? And thank you, Mr. Bobby. I'd like to hold on for his response.
Okay.
Gentlemen, have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to put you on hold. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Fuller.
Well, if I understand, the questions were kind of convoluted, but if I understand overall the questions, because there was a question in front about responsibility, and then about allies on the end of it, another question, and but where white people, I'll just start with the last one. White people are supposed to be solving the race problem. When you talk to white people, that's supposed to be their priority. That's not even supposed to be our priority. We're subject to racism, but it shouldn't be our priority, but we make it our priority in answer to the question about how do we respond to racism. We codify everything. What do you mean by codify everything? Codify everything that you say, everything that you think, everything that you do that's designed to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. That's, according to the code, counter-racist code, every black person's assignment. So that takes care of the responsibility part. Now, when you talk to white people, You don't even discuss whether or not they're allies. You just ask them, when are they going to solve the race problem? That's the question. I mean, a lot of times we say, how do you have these conversations with white people? It's a very short conversation. Why haven't you, and the conversation should consist of, like all things, when they work best, what? Questions and answers. Sir, ma'am, why haven't you solved the race problem? You can ask that. That's a simple question. I mean, white people and black people both get on TV and take up 2 and 3 hours just going on and on and on. I mean, when you sit down and say, now, can we talk honestly? That's the first request you make, and truthfully, because there's no point in talking. We're not going to be truthful and honest, and not trying excuses to try to turn everything that we say into some kind of joke. Because I look at a lot of television, and I see black people, everybody's nervous, so in order to get rid of that nervousness, they do one of two things. Either start shouting and yelling, everybody angry and whatnot, or they go to the other extreme, everybody laughing about the race problem. It turns out to be a joke. Everybody starts joking. One person starts off with a joke, and then another one just starts piling on. Next thing you know, it's complete pandemonium, and they're just having fun, talking about the race problem. Or they go to the other extreme, and that is everybody shouting at once and angry and name-calling and all like that. Neither one of those things have proven to be constructive. That's why nothing gets done. But white people are in an excellent position to solve the race problem. Why? They're in an excellent position to solve the race problem in 15 minutes, all right, if they want to do it. So you just ask them, why hasn't it been done? You know what the problem is. You know better than us. You're running everything. Why haven't you done it, Miss Gladstone, Mr. Jones, whatever her or his name is? Always be polite and courteous. Keep your voice down and don't shout like Neely Fuller's doing right now. Don't do none of that. Just ask simple questions. Is there a race problem? That's the first thing. And if they agree that there's a race problem, well, why haven't you solved the race problem, sir? And just keep asking questions. Don't accuse anybody of anything, except the white supremacists in general. But when you're talking to white people one-on-one, you want to get something done. So you just ask questions, endless questions, and don't argue about the answers that you get. That's the procedure, the codified procedure. That's why we need to codify everything and stop just wandering all over the place like we do. Come right to the point. Be well prepared. Better prepared than anybody ever was prepared. Prepared how? To win the argument? No, it shouldn't be an argument. To solve the problem. Never leaving a meeting without a problem being solved. Never, under any circumstance. Otherwise, don't have the meeting if you ain't solving no problem. Not having meetings just to have meetings. That word organize, that's been overworked, so much so that it shouldn't even be used anymore. I heard it all day yesterday. I had the radio on. Well, what we need to do when it comes right down to it, we need to get organized. What do you mean by getting organized? Well, what would you say? Codified. That's what I say. Well, what's the difference between getting organized and being codified? Because codified means every move that you make as an individual produces a constructive result. Yes. Organized, I don't know what that means, but codification is very clear. Every move that you make everything that you say, everything that you do produces a constructive result. And that does more to do huge damage to the system of white supremacy than anything else that I have ever heard of. And it's proof of it. Just do everything that's constructive.
Yes.
Don't do nothing that's non-constructive, and see what effect that has in every situation.
Before we conclude,
as an individual person, I'm not talking about as a group. I don't know whether people got that group idea. A bunch of prisoners ain't no group. They're a group of prisoners, but what is that worth being a group? Well, that just is that organized?
Yes. Before we conclude this first hour, and John did mention it a little bit, and maybe it's me, but I often wonder, since he mentioned the January 6th hearings that also will be on today, I guess at 1 o'clock or whatever they're going to do. It looks like a made-for-TV drama to me, but that's just side note. I'm often wondering, what is the constructive result going to be bringing all this up? In other words, I ask, is it going to change? Are things are going to change, or how about this? Is white supremacy going to be eliminated? I can't see where it will be. I just can't see it. But anyway, that's just me. I wonder what you think or what other people think. Is it going to be eliminated? You're having all this stuff. You're seeing all this stuff. Who did what, when, where? Some stuff allegedly. But when it's all supposedly concluded, what's going to be the result? Is the result going to be constructive or not? I can't see it. Mr. Fuller, we got a couple of minutes here. It's book time. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Now, codification means having a code of thought, speech, and action. What to think about, and then how to speak about what you're thinking about, and then how to act on what you're thinking and speaking about. 1, 2, 3. That's code. That's organizing yourself. We just insist on using that word organize into infinity, which is what we have been doing all down through the decades. What we need to do is organize. Well, what do you mean by that? We're just getting together. Well, what do you mean by that? That means organizing. Well, what do you mean by that? Getting together. Well, how do you go about doing that? Well, just do it. That's not a plan. Codification is a plan. Make sure that every move that you make has a constructive result. That's a plan. You know when something is constructive because you get a constructive result. That's instant, each and every day. If every black person on the planet did that, I ain't doing nothing that's non-constructive, not one thing. I ain't lifting a finger to be involved in anything that's not constructive. It's got to produce a constructive result, and I got to see it, that constructive result. Now, the textbook for victims of white supremacy is supposed to guide us into that type of thinking, because we ain't nowhere near that type of thinking. And that's why we keep failing. We need a code designed for the individual person. And that code says what? What is a code? Just another word? Yeah, it would be, except it has a definition. A code means every time you do it, it works. Every time you say it, it works. You get a constructive result. That's what we mean by works. Constructive result. Nothing non-constructive. It pays off every time. It doesn't fail. So this is a textbook that's supposed to help you to do that. Guide you in the thought, speech, and action that every time you say something, it's going to produce the result that you want when you say it. Yes. Every time you do something, and your want is going to always be a constructive want. Because if it's not constructive, you don't have no business wanting it anyway.
Alrighty.
And you get it by going to producejustice.com. Right now, we are having some problems producing the book that tells you this, all right? I keep having this problem periodically, and so I got to be constructive by getting on that and see that doesn't happen ever again. All these book volumes are available. I mean, there's a way to make sure that volumes are available. Nothing else will do. Not supposed to be a shortage of textbooks for victims of white supremacy. But you can get something by going to producejustice.com for the last report I got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. That concludes the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show, but stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show. Thank you for listening, and we'll start the second hour in 5 seconds. All righty, welcome to hour number 2 of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. I'd like to thank our producers and all of our technicians for the smooth transition that we're going into the second hour with. Those of you who were with us last week know what was going on, but it was a teaching moment because we all have to stay codified even in the midst of being attacked. But thank God for them. I just want to acknowledge them, that they make Mr. Fuller and myself sound so good. So thank you for your professionalism. Listen, to our callers, if you would like to be a part of today's show, let me tell you what to do. Just dial this number, 516-453-9921. And when you do, you will get in contact with a controller or call screener. Give them your name so that when you do have a call, I can properly call your name without messing it up. I have a tendency to do that, but I'm still learning to get better. And if you are a first-time caller, please make sure that you tell the call screener that, because we have something very special for you so that you can be heard. Oh, yeah. We got that working for you. Okay. Now, you can also do this. If you would like to Gmail me, you can by doing this. The numeral 7. Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. 7 Mr. Bobby @gmail.com, and I will get that, and I will read it at a certain time when things may be running slow. You can do that, and then I will read that, as I have read at least one today. But we're backed up on that too, because the callers come first. So know that. You can also get into the chat room, and all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. Then you want to make sure you get on where it says programs, and then you want the Produce Justice Show. Man, when you hit that bad button, the chat room will come up. You hit that, and you are in there. You are in there. Yeah. And Construction Action Items have taken it upon to do this. Give you a rundown of the things that we have discussed last week. And then there are current conversations in there. There's some people on there right now, even some new people. Yeah, all righty, you're on there. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Stay codified, whatever you do, whether you're in the chat room or not. We have to be codified. Stay on code. Stay on code. All righty. So those are the your instructions for today. And, yeah, look at that. We got Corey and Swa, Raymond, and Dollar Bill. Gonna get some holler there. Corey, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Get ready, get ready, get ready.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
My question today is in the Victims for White Supremacy Concept Code book, the original version, in the word guide that's included in the original version, I'm a non-white black male that would be classified as a major victim of adultery. Any non-white person who came into existence as a direct or indirect result of sexual activity between a white person and a non-white person. The first time I heard the N-word in reference to myself,
was probably 1980 or 81, 6 years old, and they referred to the kinfolk that I was with as being an N-word lover. My question is, a fellow black associate suggested to me, oh, maybe you could pass or pretend that you're a white person. And, you know, I said I've never had that want or desire, and I don't think it would work. I've always been questioned, like, who are you, what are you mixed with? And I've experienced racism since I was a child. So I wanted to ask you, Mr. Fuller, can you please elaborate on why it's incorrect, as you point out on page 144 of the original book, why it's incorrect for a person, a non-white person, to try to pass as a white person? And could I please stay on the line, Mr. Bobby?
Okay, Corey, we sure will. Mr. Fuller?
Because it causes confusion. And that's a no-no in counter-racist science. You don't want any confusion about anything at any time, not even the smallest thing. Nobody in the system of white supremacy should ever be confused about anything. Everything should be well understood. And that's a part of the counter-racist code. No confusion about anything. I don't care what it is. No confusion about what to do under any circumstance. Codification is about knowing what to do in every circumstance, knowing what to say. And definitely don't say anything or do anything that's going to cause confusion. The white supremacists thrive off of confusion. That's the logic. If anybody asks why is it a no-no to do anything that causes confusion? The white supremacists thrive off of confusion. That's one reason in the classifications of people. They got 21 classifications now. In 1860, I think it was 3 classifications: white, black, mulatto. That was in 1860, according to some records I have seen. Now there's something like 21 or 23, something like that. People haven't changed that much on this planet since 1860. The code book says what? There's 3 classifications when it comes to racial, just like it started out, but not the same ones. Exactly. It's white, non-white, and white supremacists. But you have to be white in order to be a white supremacist, in answer to your question. Well, I've already answered the first part of that question, but that's just an add-on that it'll cause confusion, and you don't want to add to the confusion. People will look at you and say, "Are you white?" And you'll say, "No." Why? Because you said that you was a result of a white person apparently having sexual intercourse with a non-white person. So that makes you non-white automatically. So of the categories, white, non-white, and white supremacist. And just because a white person is white doesn't make that white person a white supremacist. But in the system of white supremacy, it automatically makes that white person a racist suspect. That's a duty of the victim of white supremacy, the non-white person. You have a duty to suspect any white person in the system of white supremacy to be a white supremacist. And you can tell them that.
Yes.
That's a part of the code. I mean, you have a duty to tell them that. Any white person. If a person says that, well, I'm white, but I'm not a white supremacist, And you can say, well, you can say that, sir, or you can say that, ma'am, but as a victim of white supremacy, and according to counter-racist science, I have a duty to suspect that you could be one, and most likely are one, because I don't have a master list of who is and who is not a white supremacist. That's the way that works. See, everything in counter-racist science, there shouldn't be any confusion. Everything should be so pure. I mean, this cuts like a knife. That's right down the first time around, not no dancing around. I call it, comparing it to basketball, it's net every time you touch the ball. Counter-racist science is net, meaning everything that you say wipes out everything that everybody else says that's contrary to what you're saying. Just wipes it out solidly. I mean, everybody can see it clear. Otherwise, it ain't real counter-racist science.
Exactly. Right. And speaking of counter-racist sciences, I myself make every effort to be codified. I find myself using that term or these terms, whatever the situation is, could be suspected as being whatever it might be. I never try to accuse anybody anymore of being something. I like to put the word could be suspected as.
Yes. That's scientific. You know, if you're not exact, well, you say you're not exact.
That prevents a lot of arguments from going on.
Sure, you don't want an argument to ever happen. You want a conversation. It's the difference between an argument and a conversation. Yeah. And I say here on the air all the time, what is that difference? See, that's the logical question. The logical question is, a conversation consists basically of questions and answers.
And answers, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why?
Okay.
Because you always get the most constructive result from the procedure of questions and answers. An argument is just designed to win arguments. Conversation is designed to do what? Produce constructive results.
Still learning that. From the Gmails, this is from Divatude, says this, Mr. Fuller, I've noticed something disturbing and wanted to know if you have witnessed this growing up. I've been observing that black people spend a lot of time calling another black person ugly. I've seen black people from multiple groups or form multiple groups just so they can call other black people ugly in 101 ways. Every argument and every discussion turns into how ugly a person is. I've also seen black people talk about how ugly black people are to white people. My question to you, Mr. Fuller, is this. Did you notice this yourself growing up? And if so, why do you think this happens?
That's the system of white supremacy. Anything that happens to black people that shouldn't happen, the white supremacists came up with it, one way or another, either directly or indirectly. Indirectly means through other black people. Directly means straight from white people. So they do a lot of things indirectly now, and always have. Why? Because that's the easiest way to do it. Get black people to do it to each other, like killing each other, nonstop, round the clock, in every city and town in the northwestern hemisphere. Hey, we don't have time. I don't have time. I got other things to do. I mean, I got to lay out a city and got to provide jobs for white people and build beautiful houses and have, fancy boats to ride around in. I don't have time to, I'd like to just spend full time just, hands-on abusing black people. But, but hey, I'm white in the system of white supremacy, so I got to be the master of everything. Not some things, everything. I have boats to build and buildings to build. So I assign a whole lot of these black people, I mean, through my movies and all like that and video games, to kill each other. Because I ain't got time to kill them. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I'll provide the guns and all like that, but, you know, I don't have time, you know. I just yawn and drink my coffee and say, how many died last night? How many of these black people killed each other last night in Chicago? Oh, yeah, okay, a couple of hundred. Oh, well, hey, you know, you think you can get it up to about 500 a night, you know? You know, I like to read that in my papers, okay? After we go around and count the bodies. But I don't have time to go around killing them myself, because when I do it, when one of us kill one of them, they're all out in the street talking about injustice and all like that. But they're stupid. You know, all we want to do is just see them dead. I don't care who kills them.
Wow. All righty. And lastly, for this Gmail here, this is from Rachel. She says, Mr. Fuller, what would be a more precise way to label sundown towns?
Towns where the white supremacists let you know that you're not supposed to be where you are at sundown. You can just tell it like they tell it. If it's after sundown, I don't want to see your black face or no other part of your black self in this town. End of story. Do you understand what I said? All right. That's all they want to know. So they sundown town. That's not the name we gave to it. And so that's what that means. Not don't be on the street or something like that, or bad things are going to happen to you. All right? Things that you don't approve of, like getting locked up or getting dead. Do you understand that, Blackie? All right.
Yeah. All righty. We're going out to L.A. Get ready, Swa. Get ready. Thank you for holding, Corey. Swa, you're on, man. Do your thing.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby, and greetings, Mr. Neely Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Neely Fuller, what should be done to or about the racists? No, what should be done to the racists is my question.
Wait a minute. What should be done about what?
What should be done to racist white supremacists?
What should be done to white supremacists?
Yes.
All the things are in the textbook that will help to eliminate the system of white supremacy and replace it with the system of justice. So just to do everything that you think will help to do that, that produces that constructive result in the most constructive manner. The textbook for victims of white supremacy tell you. So that was kind of broad, so I gave you a broad answer because that was a broad question. You codify what you do and say in such a way that the result is the end of the system of white supremacy and the replacement of the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And the system of justice, so that you'll know what it looks like, means nobody is being mistreated. You don't mistreat anybody. That's the first part. And the other part is guarantee that everybody who needs help the most gets the most constructive help, starting with whatever situation that you're in. Who needs help? And most likely everybody will say, oh, I need a whole lot of help. I mean, you asked the correct question now, because I need a whole lot of help. Well, how many people are here that, that just heard me say who needs help? Well, there's 32 people. All right, find out who needs help the most. Because somebody out of these 32 needs more help than everybody else put together. That's who we're going to start with. That's how it's done. That's the scientific way of doing it. Start with the person that needs help the most. I had to tell somebody that the other day who was having a problem on the job about how to proceed. And I said, it's real simple according to the code. Just find out if, first of all, if anybody's being mistreated. Everybody who's being mistreated, hold up your hand. You know, I said, of course, it was supposed to be in a meeting. I'm giving an example now so you'll know what I'm talking about in a practical way, because everything in the code is supposed to be practical, something you can do right now. Don't have to wait around or have no meeting or so-called organized 15 years from now. I'm talking about right this minute, right where you are. Find out if anybody's being mistreated. And most likely, you know, if you got 10 people, 3 or 4 hands might go up. Okay. Then the next question is, okay, in eliminating this mistreatment, who needs help the most? So you just find out what kind of mistreatment the person is going through. And say, okay, we'll start with the person who is being mistreated the most. It's real simple. See, codification is about simplicity and efficiency. And taking care of things immediately, not one of these days. Woe is me, one of these days, by some miracle, everything gonna be all right, I hope. No, codification is about getting it done right this minute. Mm-hmm. Right this minute, right where you are. And most black people can do that on a daily basis, but when it comes to the race issue, we seem to get confused and always talking about one of these days. One of these days. One of these days, get out of the days right now. DAZE, get out of that right this minute. By doing what? Codifying everything to take care of whatever the problem is right this minute. Right where we are. Mm-hmm. Stop talking about maybe tomorrow.
Codify, baby, codify. Listen, media, this is a word to media hash. Got your Gmail, and it's good, and you ask a lot of questions on there. But as you know, that when I ask Mr. Fuller your question, he only answers one question at a time, and that's to cut down confusion. So I wrote you back and want you to edit it so that I could ask Mr. Fuller your question or questions, or just simply call in, and I gave you the number to call in so that you can ask your question with the fervor that you have or compassion that you wrote your question in. So I did respond to it, so you know what to do. Okay, thank you, Squaw. L.A. cooking in the house. Hope your classes out there are going well, and they miss you in the chat, too, by the way. So go back in the chat. Thank you. Raymond, Georgia. Go ahead, Raymond. You're in.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Booba. Mr. Bobby, good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Yeah. My question is why nobody seems to be saying that we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, or we're in a prison. Neither no coming up clearly and just say it. I mean, as Mr. Fuller referred to the general in the Gandhi movie, like the general doing what the general doing, it requires that. So we're still seeing other like coming on the same thing. Don't go there, don't go there. I mean, like nobody say just saying it plainly. What is it? The system that powerful, Mr. Fuller? Please just tell me something more than I don't know.
Okay, Raymond, I don't know if your phone is acting up or something. Something about being in the prison. Mr. Fuller, did you hear him all the way or what?
I couldn't understand what was being said because it sounds like he was coming in broken up.
Yeah, it did sound like that, Raymond.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I'm saying, all right, let me. Why nobody, no government, no for black people, no preachers, no spoke saying that we are in a prison system. Act like nobody's saying that.
Okay, why is it nobody's saying that we're in a prison system? Because nobody is who is not the person who is not saying that we're in a prison system is a person who is not saying that we're in a prison system. So how do you say that we're in a prison system? You say that we're in a prison system. That's the codified procedure. So you notice that nobody's saying it, so you say it. And then that eliminates nobody saying it. And then you get other people to say it. You ask other people, like I do right now. I'm saying it. I'm saying we're in a prison system. And you're correct. When I look around, I don't see anybody else saying we're in a prison system. So I ask them, say we're in a prison system. And the person, I guess, might say that I'm not going to do that, I will do that, but I'll say try it. Try saying consistently and repeatedly, not just one time, but just say it every day when you're talking about the system of white supremacy. Say that it's a prison system, that we're all born in prison if you're a person of color, a person who is classified as non-white, and you are subject to all of the prison laws, all of the prison. You know, you're never out of prison. You're born in prison. In fact, you were in prison before you were born because the person who gave you birth was in prison if they were a person of color. And just keep saying it. This is how all things start. Somebody starts saying it. Somebody starts saying, what we need is a system of white supremacy. Somebody said that. Otherwise, it never would have happened. I don't know who the somebody was. Doesn't matter now. It's a done deal. I mean, it's a huge done deal. I mean, the most donest of deals ever dealt in recorded history. The most efficient system for dominating and mistreating people ever thought of in the minds of people. According to what? Neely Fuller? No. According to the evidence.
That's it. All righty. Thank you, Raymond. And you might want to check that phone out because we did have difficulty hearing you. But nevertheless, thank you for your call. All righty. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. So we thank you for listening. And we'd like for you to stay on the line because we have about 30 minutes of this show left. Now, if you have a question or a comment, and if you are a first-time caller, call this number, 516-453-9921. And in particular, if you are a first-time caller, make sure you give the call screener your name so that we can expedite you. Oh, yeah, we want to hear from you. Yes, we do. You can also Gmail me. Here's my Gmail address, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And I will try to respond to you as quickly as I can. Excuse me, constructive action items. I didn't mean to necessarily send you that. My Gmail address, you already know that. But anyway, just want to make the correction publicly. You can also get into the chat room, by the way, if you are listening or if you want something to say. Get in there. They have great conversations in there. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to go where it says programs, and you want the Produce Justice Show. You click that bad boy, and the chat room icon will come up, and you click that, and then you are going to join a host of people in there who, for the most part, are codified people. They follow the code, stay with the code, which just stay with the code. Just be codified. Learn codified. We're all learn to be codified. We're all still learning. As a matter of fact, in a few moments, I don't know what time that might be, but in a few moments, Mr. Fuller will talk about his book where you can learn all about codification. As a matter of fact, let's do that right now, Mr. Fuller. That way we can go right through.
Yes,
let's talk about your book.
Go to producejustice.com, and there's at least the original copy that is there. I think. I haven't seen it myself. And there's a delay in the 2016 revised expanded edition of the original 1984 edition. The 1984 edition, the first one, came out in 1984, and it has a computer design on the cover. The 2016 edition has a cover that is in color, basically black, brown, red, and yellow border around it, and pronouncedly other colors. And with the title of the book, the textbook Victim for Thought, Speech, and Action, is in smaller print. In the 1984 edition, it's in large print. And it's supposed to be all in one volume, but I couldn't do it with the word guide in one volume without making it too heavy to carry around. It's supposed to be a textbook workbook, meaning you use it all the time. You places where you can take it, in seminars or in a classroom or riding on a bus or somewhere where it's handy, where you have some place that you have to store it quickly under circumstances, on a job or something like that, when you're taking your break. That it's handy. I would have liked to have had it all in hard cover too, and in the type of covers that you see on a lot of the book called the Holy Bible. That's the ideal way. And like a lot of Bibles are not only, they're very, like all Bibles, the Holy King James Version, are very thick and very small print. Well, I wouldn't want anything that was a small print like in the King James Version of the Holy Bible in most of their printings, but in one standard type copy, what I would like to have, ideally, is one with large print that has everything in it, both the Word Guide and the 2016 edition at least, and maybe even the original at least, if I could get it all in one, between two covers, and then have it in that version, and some people may know what I'm talking about, where the book is pliable. In other words, it's very flexible. You can almost fold it. I mean, the pages are that way. They're made that way scientifically. And the cover is that way. It's not a hard cover. It's a soft cover, but it just doesn't come apart when you bend it or something. Or the creases don't stay after you release it from your hand. They go right back to their original form. I think most people know what I'm talking about who are familiar with the printing of Bibles. Yes, anyhow, you can get what I do have out there, and I'll be working on all these things in the future if I last long enough, or have somebody do it after I'm long gone, if this problem isn't solved. But you can get what you can get now by going to producejustice.com. But keep watching the site, the website, producejustice.com. And in a short while, everything should be there, both the original copy, the Word Guide, and the 2016 revised, updated copy. And the book is designed for the individual person, where you can solve your individual problems. Because the theory is, solve the problem of each individual black person on the planet, you have automatically solved the problems of all black people on the planet. That's just mathematically how that works out. Tailor everything to the individual person. If you can solve the problem of every person on the planet, you have solved the problem of every person on the planet and of all people collectively. And this is designed to solve the race problem for the individual black person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, if you do it for each individual black person, you have solved it for all black people.
Yes.
You've got your organization, because the basic organization is one person.
Mm-hmm.
Solve the problems of that one person, then that person is organized, if some people insist on using that word. Organize each person as a person so that that person can do everything that needs doing anywhere that person happens to be, in every area of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Economics through war. That's the theory, and I'm pretty sure from the tests that have been made of these things, people have given me feedback down through the years saying, hey, when you try at least some of these things, they work. And those that don't, well, you find out that, well, the circumstances weren't correct for them and all like that. And it might work in some circumstances and not in others. So it's a learning thing, too, as you go along, because you never stop learning. That's a part of the code.
Never. Right. Okay.
Go to producejustice.com.
All righty. And as a side note, in the nanotech world, it could be suggested, but no, I have no verification of this, that book, your book, Mr. Fuller, could be written or could be reduced to where you can have it actually almost the size of your hand, maybe a little bit larger, using the computer and nanotechnology. I'm suggesting that it could be so that book is not, you mentioned the Bible being thick. Can you imagine your whole volume of book being in basically the palm of your hand and using a computer? The whole thing could be accessed that way. Could be suggested as. Remember that.
Well, consider everything.
Yeah.
That's the compensatory way. Consider everything that will work.
It will work, exactly. All righty. Okay, everybody, New York, Justin, and Estelle in the Mojave, get ready. You got the money? We got it. The dollar from New York. Dollar bill. You on, man. You on.
Oh, my goodness. Good morning, gentlemen. Such a blessed day we have here in New York. The weather's lovely.
Yes,
I want to say good morning to Mr. Fuller and good morning, Mr. Barber.
Got it, sir.
All right. So let's move right into it. I don't know, I've listened to the show, but I wanted to discuss what's going on. We had a guy here in New York who was attacked by, they were two really non-white people, and he was attacked in his store by a darker gentleman. And I looked at that response, and what people are saying is that it was an act of self-defense. So I'm wondering, and what would be the codified response in a situation where someone, and I know you mentioned it in your book about defending yourself, but what would be the codified response in a situation where someone is in your face and you think that you are threatened?
What is the codified response when someone is in what?
In your face, and you think that your life...
By in your face, you mean what?
Mean in your face, like I'm in your space, like in your face. My face is right in your face.
And by in your face, by doing something while they're in your face, are they talking or what?
In a threatening manner.
Oh, a person is threatening you.
Yes.
Then you put distance between you and the threat. Distance.
And if you can't,
you keep trying because you don't have any other option. But you don't do anything until if the person tries to touch you physically and whatnot, you still try to get away from the source of the aggression, like you would dealing with an animal.
Okay.
You try to get away from the animal first. And if you can't, because the person physically grabs you, then you defend yourself against any type of injury or being held as a hostage, which if the person grabs you and doesn't let you move, you're being held hostage now. You're being enslaved further than you already are. Because if you're black and you're on the planet in 2022, you're already a slave anyway in the system of white supremacy. System of white supremacy is a slavery system. So if someone grabs you physically, they are holding you because of some demand that they are making. That's kidnapping. You can call it that and probably make it stick because it's true. I mean, if you could, it's really kidnapping is a slang term. I mean, you run off with a child, a kid, while there's napping. Napping means asleep. However, that doesn't exactly fit your situation if you're awake. But it can be called kidnapping because it usually is in the northwestern hemisphere in legal terms anyway. Or being held hostage, meaning the person is making a demand and the person will let you go if you let them meet the demands. But if a person is demanding something of you unjustly, you resist the demand that they are making as best you can. But you do try to resist the aggression as best you can in answer to the question.
Do I have the right to cause them bodily harm if I have to?
Do you have the right to do what?
To cause them bodily harm. In this instance, the other non-white person who was threatened murdered the person who was doing the threatening. So do I have that right?
It depends on what the law says. It depends on what the white supremacists. See, we're all in a prison. So this is what you call, if it's one, or all of the people, non-white, who were involved in this confrontation or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Okay, but you are doing this in the prison yard of the white supremacists, because we are all prisoners of war. So it's whatever they approve of and let you do without punishment to you. If they say that whatever it is you're supposed to do when that happens. In other words, I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you what the code says it shouldn't happen. But in the prison system called the white supremacy, and it is happening, you try to defend yourself the best you can and then plead your case to the white supremacists who you're going to have to answer to for whatever you do in those circumstances. And so I would recommend just what I recommend if it's the white supremacists who grab me. I try to get away from the aggression if they're doing it unjustly, but if it's the white supremacists under, say, like many black people encounter, and it's a legal situation, like they have what they call law enforcement, and they have a law enforcement officer, then I follow the code strictly. That's an open and shut thing. Don't fuss, don't fight. fight, don't flee. But now just anybody that's coming up doing that, a fellow prisoner, just like you would in a prison, which is where you are. You try to break free from them and run to the people who are supposed to be protecting you, who presumably, in the system of white supremacy, would be white. In other words, try to direct their attention to somebody who can really straighten it out without you having to do it. And that's always the prison master. See, a lot of black people are just chomping at the bit to get in some other black person's face. But they know what happens when they get in the white supremacist's face.
Yeah, they know.
And those
right.
that don't know, they get a real quick awakening.
All righty. Thank you there, my brother. Let's go, new caller alert. Let's go to Kentucky. Man, we got some love in Kentucky. Love. All right. Yeah, you like that. I thought you would like that. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Fuller, I just want to say thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Because I'm talking through my headphones.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
go ahead.
Good. Thank you for your book, your knowledge. It has helped me tremendously, especially in the area of labor and dealing with management at work. But my question is, on page 127 of the word guide, under the word friend, in the question section under the word friend, there's a question that says, during the existence of white supremacy, how can a white person qualify for friendship with a non-white person without speaking, and acting effectively to replace white supremacy with justice? My question is to that question, how does a white person who associates with non-white people speak and act effectively to replace white supremacy?
The question is, it seems like you said quite a bit there, but the question is, how does a white person, I'm going to have to take this sentence apart so I really understand what I'm being asked. How does a white person do what?
How does a white person who associates with non-white people?
How does a white person who associates with non-white people?
Yes, sir. Speak and act effectively to end white supremacy.
What is the correct thing to do for a white person?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Well, you ask them. You ask them what it is that they want to do. It gets to those 4 wants, like the basis for it on page 171 and 172. Everybody wants to do something. So a white person who wants to associate with black people, you just ask the logical question. Why do you want to associate with me? And wait for the answer, and don't argue about the answer. Just be ready for the next question. That's how you do it. But now, if you're asking me what their code is, you'll find that out by them doing whatever they do. And then you act according to the counter-racist code. See, I don't know what the white person is going to do until they do it. And you're saying the white person comes up and announces to you, I want to associate with you. Then you say, like on page 171 and 172 of the 2016 edition, you paraphrase it by saying, why do you want to associate with me? And wait for the answer, and don't interfere with the answer. Just have the next question ready, and the next question is, since they said they want to associate with you, that's what they want to do. Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to associate with me in all 9 areas of activity? And you wait for them to answer.
Yeah.
How do you plan to associate with me in economics, in education, in entertainment, labor, law, politics, sex, and war? since you say you want to associate with me. So the first thing you want to know is what? Really? What do you mean by associate? See, words are very important in counter-racist science, and you don't let any word just flop around out there and not attached to nothing. You want to know what that word means.
Okay.
And wait for the answer. That's the procedure. That's the codified procedure. That's what code is about, getting right to the point. No dribbling down the court, if you want to compare it to basketball. Anytime you touch the ball, it's all net. Anytime you touch the ball, it's all net from any spot on the court. That's what counter-racist science is. You don't dribble the ball at all, ever. You don't pass it to anybody else, ever. You touch that ball, it goes into the net, period. That's counter-racist science.
Thank you, Miss Love, for calling. Don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, we have a few more moments in here. So let me ask you this. If we go over, can you go over by about 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think so. Is there any complication in doing that?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm getting ready to ask Robert, but I wanted to make sure that it was okay with you. And Robert, give us 10 more minutes, please, sir. That way I can get everybody, I'll try to get everybody on the line. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Let's do this very quickly. I think it's Justin in Illinois. Quickly, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Fuller. Hello, Mr. Bobby.
Hello, sir.
I just had I wanted Mr. Fuller to speak on which way did the white folks go, because recently, over the weekend, there was a massacre at the Morocco-Spain border where 31 non-white people who were trying to escape Africa were massacred at the Spain border. Can he please speak on which way did the white folks go?
All righty. Thank you there. All right, Mr. Fuller?
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I mean, like all the other unfortunate things that happen to black people in the system of white supremacy. I mean, those people, whomever they were, I guess they were called immigrants or migrants or people who are fleeing conditions from where they are to try to get somewhere where things are better. And that's where I came up with just the response then, or the thought, something to think about, and in the form of a question. Where non-white people are concerned, they seem to be all over the planet, many of by the thousands, saying one way or another, which way did the white people go? Why? Because things are better where the white people are. Things are always terrible where there's nothing but black people. Let me out of here. I can't stand one more day among the people that look like me. Why? Because they are making it difficult for me to try to do anything that makes sense. And I can't stand no more of it. So which way did the white people go? Now, when you start out doing that, many white people, many of them who are white supremacists, said, don't come trying to find me unless I send for you. Now, if you do so, I'm going to make it difficult for you either directly or indirectly. So I will have unfortunate things happen to you along the way. Why? Because I didn't send for you. I wanted you to stay there. I mean, you say you like being with your own people. You believe in being a black nationalist and all like that. Well, stick with what you believe in. Don't bother me at all. And at the same time, the white supremacists are winking at each other, saying, we're still running everything that they think that they're running anyway. And all of their leaders think that they are running what they are running. They're not doing anything that I didn't approve of, which means they're not running anything. But they got in that position where they can't say that they're not running anything, because then I'll take them out of that position. And then they will be with the position of the people who are saying, which way did the white people go? They'll be in the same position that the people who are trying to get away from them. They will be trying to catch up with whichever way the white people went. Because I fixed it that way. That's what white supremacy means. So it's just unfortunate. That's going to continue. That's not going to stop. That's what I have to say about it, because that's what is continuing. As long as you have the system of white supremacy, you're going to have black people saying in every neighborhood, not just in every nation and whatnot, which way did the white people go? Oh, I got to see some white people, because then things get better. I can have a suit and a tie. I can have some a decent meal. I can have some shoes on my feet. I can have ships in the harbor bringing things back and forth and all like that. I mean, otherwise I ain't got nothing. And none of these other black people that I'm raised up around got nothing. And we're just clawing at each other for a few crumbs of bread that fall from the tree that fell out of some airplane somewhere.
Ships in the harbor. That's commerce. Thank you, Justin. Thank you so much. Let's go to Estelle in the Mojave Desert. Wait a minute. Did I get you in here? Ooh. Here we go. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Fuller, how are you this morning?
Good,
Still learning?
good.
Still learning.
Okay. My jobs are several. I'm a home health caregiver. I do special needs education. I'm a case manager. And in my job and personal duties, even helping elder family members, I've experienced a complexity of procedures like filling out tons of paperwork to help them, time deadlines, scheduling meetings in order for the person, whether they're white or non-white, to obtain, let's say, things like health care, jobs, social services, retirement money, Social Security, disability. Mr. Fuller, you stated that the racist white supremacists do things to strengthen the system of white supremacy. In your opinion, how does creating difficult procedures and making it very difficult for the most helpless, vulnerable, mentally ill, and physically ill people, how does creating all that difficulty to just obtain things, how is that strengthening white supremacy? And have you had to experience that?
The experience of
filling out, you have to fill out this paperwork. Then you have to fill this out. No, you didn't fill this out right. No, you have to come in on this time. No, you didn't come in at this deadline time. I mean, just constant procedures and complexities that many people fall through the smoke. Why do you think that? How is that strengthening white people's system by making it chaotic for vulnerable people?
All righty. Mr. Fuller?
Because that's a part of the system of white supremacy. Make everything complicated for the non-white person. Make everything difficult. There's a no-brainer on that. In the system of white supremacy, everything is supposed to be more difficult for a black person, a non-white person, than it is for a white person. Everything. That's a part of the system of white supremacy. Making everything in every area of activity more difficult. Just like, for example, you gave some just now, paperwork and whatnot, and an example, one that some black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere are familiar with, and are voting. When you qualify for a person who can vote, they would ask questions like, how many drops of water are in the Pacific Ocean? That's what they would ask a black person. A question like that. How many drops of water are in the Pacific Ocean, ma'am, sir? And the black person would say, I don't know. Well, then you can't vote. Next, they do that. make things difficult
All right,
for every
thank you,
black
Michelle.
person that you encounter. Whatever they're trying to do that may be of constructive value, make it difficult. On every job that they have, make it more difficult than it ordinarily would be if the person was white.
All righty.
And still expect that job to be done efficiently.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Estelle. Cleo, we only got about 10 minutes, so everybody please on the line, please be quick. Cleo, Houston, wait a minute, I'll get you in here. Okay. Cleo, quickly there. Wait a minute, did I get you in here? Here we go.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Long live NFJ and forever live Logic. Thank you, Mr. Bobby, Moon Pie, Robert, Sharon, CRSC, at CS, and the Produce Justice team. Real quick, Mr. Bobby, just a Black People's Prayer of Liberation to close us out before you go to another caller. Press Welsing as a BGQ. Thou who art blacker than a trillion midnights, whose eyes shine brighter than a billion suns, thou whose hair does call, tighter than a million springs, radiating all energy throughout the universe. We beseech thee, one and only one, to give us total strength to carry out thy will for the universe, to establish justice on planet Earth and live in peace. Peace to you, brothers, and have a great day.
Thank you, Cleo. Thank you. Sam, Colorado, quickly. Wait a minute. Here we go. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, man. Mr. Fuller, if a white person is killed, let's say they're trying to help a non-white people, and they get killed by other white people, and those white people say, oh, it's because he helped or she helped other non-white people. Does that mean that white person that was killed was a victim of racism, white supremacy?
No. That white person was a victim of mistreatment. White people kill each other, arguing about how best to run the system of white supremacy. They do that all the time. They had a so-called civil war. That's what that was about. As one example. It's a gangster operation. Gangsters have fallen out. Like the movie Godfather, they all came together, the gangsters, around the table, and they said, we're about to have some serious conflicts with each other, the way things are going. Because we've been killing each other about what? About how best to dominate these black people up in Harlem. How best to go about doing what we do where they're concerned. So we're going to come up with a better system, better way of doing things, so all of us will prosper, and none of us will hurt each other in that process.
Okay.
The system of white supremacy is based on the same principles as organized crime. That's why I have on that movie list on my website the movie Godfather 1 and 2.
Yes,
because
sir.
They actually have a scene where the Corleone family got with the other families. They're all gangsters, but they agreed that what we're going to do is going to have a terrible effect on the black people without us affecting each other to the extent that we fight each other about how we're going to handle them. And that principle is the principle of white supremacy everywhere on the planet, even
everywhere.
today.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for your question. Let's go quickly to Leona. We're trying to get everybody in here. Leona, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning. Mr. Fuller, recently I was listening to an old tape of you speaking, and the subject was problem solving. And you mentioned something where you said, whatever's bothering you at the moment, that's the problem. And you also mentioned something about follow the logic back to the source of the problem. And for some reason, I didn't catch the rest of what you said. But my question to you is this. If you don't mind, could you give an example of a recent problem that you solved and the steps that you took to solve that problem? Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Oh,
no more callers, by the way. No more callers. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
I can't think of an example right offhand right now, a problem, but everyday problems. You think of sit down, the procedure, the codified procedure. Like I have a problem right now trying to answer this question. See, that's how I'm supposed to think. You're presenting me with something that's hypothetical, but I have to think about the answer to that question. And I was thinking about, okay, right now I'm thinking about how to best answer that question. So that makes a problem. But I haven't had time to think about it. You know, how do you go about handling a problem right now except to codify it? And I haven't had time to codify the answer to your question right now, which means when I'm handed that problem, I can't pass it on. That's a part of the code. You don't pass up and say, well, hey, I'm not going to deal with it. I'll get back to that some other time. No, when you're handed a problem, you're supposed to take care of that problem right now, one way or another. But right now, I can't think of a way. My mind is not working that fast. So I can't even think of a way to answer that question, except to say, I don't know how to give you an example, because that's really what's happening now. But it now means I have the job, the assignment of finding out how to do that instantly.
Okay. Leona, call back next week, and maybe Mr. Fuller had time to think about the question there. We're pressed up against time, but thank you for your call. Quickly, RT, see if I can get you in here. RT.
This is a question for Mr. Fuller. A lot of people have said that the reason why white supremacists do what they do is because they're afraid of being annihilated. And I think that you've said that black people have never been in the position to annihilate anyone. And so I agree with you that when you said that the real reason why the white supremacists do what they do is because of fun, glory, and material things. That's it. That's how I get your response to that.
Yes, well, a part of, and this is how I've always started it off, about that, what I know about what happens when you mix white with black, you get something other than white.
Okay.
But the white supremacists figured out that a long time ago. That's how they got the white supremacists going, and they control all of that. All you do is just control people's sexual activity.
Okay.
By doing
Mr.
what?
Mr. Fuller, I am so sorry, but I just got a word here that we are going to have a hard cutoff in a couple of minutes here, or maybe a minute. So I'm sorry to cut you off. Sorry, RT. Call back next week. KQ, same thing. Yo, Jeter, same thing. Call back next week. They have you on the screen, so you will be the first ones if you elect to call back. I'm sorry, but we actually went over. The system is going to cut us off. So, Mr. Fuller, thank you for your time. Callers, thank you for your time. I apologize that the system is the way it is, but we did go over, and the calls kept coming in. We want to answer every question, but we simply can't because they're going to cut us off. So thank you for listening. Call back next week. Chatters and everybody, thank you. We'll try to do better next week. Thank you for listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you.